Hello and welcome to TBQ Live. Really lovely to have everyone join us on the live broadcast, and also if you are catching up with us on the replay. Hi, Rena. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Delighted to be here. How are you today, Maria?
I'm great. Thank you very much. I am great. A little tired, but it's got to be said, we're doing mental resilience, which is all about pushing through. So it seems like a very poignant subject today.
I think you're
Okay,
not
so
alone. I think you're not alone. There are a lot of people who are tired, and absolutely, you're right, spot on. Today's topic is all about that and more. So back to you, Maria.
absolutely. Okay, before we take a deep dive into the second part of emotional resilience, how we have some hacks and some strategies on the science and art of weathering any storm, let's tell you first a little bit about TBQ Live itself. Okay, so TBQ Live, we are here with you, myself and Rena, every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And what we do is we take discussions, we invite guests about some of the most current issues that business is facing at the moment. And we take a perspective of what's it like for the individual, what's it like for the team, and then what it's like for the company as an absolute whole. So we are here twice every month, and we invite you to join us as we discuss all of the current issues. So that's a little bit about TBQ Live. Rena and I actually present this as part of a program that we have developed called the New Blueprint, which is getting people, businesses, teams, and cultures to level up and scale up in what is an unpredictable era. It came from Rena's brilliant book, The Brilliance Quotient, which I advise everyone to take a look through because it's absolutely excellent. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Rena now, and we're going to go for a bit of a recap about what we spoke about last time before we go on to look at the hacks and strategies for today's session. Over to you, Rena.
Thanks, Maria. And I liked it when you were describing today's session, you used the word emotional resilience, and actually it's written it mental resilience. And I'm glad you did that because resilience, there are four fundamental types, and we're going to go through that in a bit. But as Maria said, a quick recap of what we did last time. So we talked about mental resilience. But what we delved into was the science behind resilience, or not being resilient for that matter. And it's a really interesting topic because we started off with the definition, and you can actually see the definition on the left side of the slide if you can. And it's all about two aspects. The Cambridge definition talks about the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. And then we have this definition about resilience that is often defined as a mental reservoir of energy. So it's something that's much more, not just the instant bounce back reaction or being able to recover at the time of crisis, which we have all been doing about. The reason why many of us are tired and fatigued is that second element of resilience is when you have that reservoir of energy that you can access so that you constantly and continuously manage things which are unpredictable, chaotic, disruptive, stressful, so on and so forth. I'm sure there are many other words that are coming in your mind. So resilience is really about the whole that you have for in the moment response and response over a bit of time. And the reason we talked about the science last time was really because when you understand what's happening in the body when you are feeling resilient or not so resilient, i.e., you understand the mechanics of how your brain is responding, what's happening in your body from a biochemistry aspect, it starts giving you the tools of how you can have resilience. Now, that's something that's really unique about the new program that Maria was talking about. Our program is all about taking a science-based approach. So we have leadership, the science and art of leadership. What we focus on is that science. What's the science that you need to understand? So once you know the science, then it's like Lego bricks. You can build your castle, your reality, success, your future, because you really have those foundational Lego bricks in place. So that's what we talked about, the science. You can watch the recording at any point of time. But today we're going to the art of resilience, and we're going to talk about what's out there which is about the four types of resilience, also give you some indicators and symptoms of weak resilience. And not to say that you might be experiencing it. For all you know, you are really managing the resilience quotient and factor in your life. But many leaders today are leading teams. Even if you don't have a team leadership role, are working with other individuals who might be fatigued, who might be experiencing weak resilience. And we'd like to share this with you so that you can start spotting it. Because once you start spotting the symptoms of weak resilience, you know where to help the person, how to react yourself, or how to manage your presence of other people who are experiencing weak resilience. Then we're going to get into some easy to use habits. And Maria and I'm going to talk about some wins. We call it hacks. So they could be neuro hacks, they bio hacks, which can really help you build up your resilience quotient, both in the short term and the long term. So that's what we are going to be talking about today. So without further ado, let's talk about the four types of resilience. Now, this is fairly simple. There are four types, and you've heard this time and again, and that's why I was making that statement about calling it emotional or mental resilience. So there's physical resilience, there's emotional resilience, there's mental resilience, and there's spiritual resilience. And of course, they're all interconnected. So while you've talked about today's subject being mental resilience, it draws upon the other resilience factors as well. So that's one element that we wanted to just expand that definition of understanding resilience, that even if you might be emotionally weak at any point of time, if you have a high quotient in the physical, spiritual, and mental resilience, you can draw upon it. So it's really like they kind of interconnect with each other and you are in the core of it all. But what do we mean when we use these words? Right? Let's kind of unpack that a bit more, because when you're trying to build up that resilience or the leadership and being mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually resilient, it's important to understand what are we really talking about. It's the same concept like understanding the science behind why and how we can be resilient or not so. So physical resilience, and I put down a definition here, which I'm going to read out for you because I think so it was nicely encapsulated and also had a nice bio word to it, which hopefully I can pronounce. So it says in physical resilience, the ability of an organism to respond to stressors that disrupt normal homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is literally the normal functioning of your body. You know, it's what's keeping you alive, it's keeping us well, feeling well, having the energy to do things, being able to go out and meet people or go for a walk. It's the physical ability of the body to respond and be fulfilled. That's physical resilience. And the way to be able to really look at it is to look at what happens when you're physically resilient, when you start kind of becoming susceptible to illnesses. You know, when you're feeling really tired after a period of time, when you could perhaps the illnesses might become slightly more serious, where you don't feel well physically, you might be having headaches, you know, you're feeling lethargic. That's symptoms of weak resilience. So if you're spotting it in yourself or other people, it's something to just kind of watch out for, because we all have days when we are feeling physically low. But if it's happening on a sustained basis, then you know that's one quadrant that is getting affected. So physical resilience is all about your ability to be physically responding and living well. So that's physical resilience. Now, emotional resilience. Now, the Q is in the word. It's about emotions. But the interesting thing about emotional resilience is that all of us, and we talked about in part one, is all of us experience a spectrum of emotions, right? From anger, fear to elation, joy, peace, calm, you name it. And it's really understanding that as individuals, we will all feel anger, fear, and all of those aspects. We will, because that's what we do as human beings. The fact is that are we aware of those emotions in a non-judgmental way? And can we access the entire spectrum of emotions so that we can really respond, not just in the moment, but over a period of time when we're experiencing adversity crisis? That's what emotional resilience is all about. And we talked about in part one, to give you a little bit of a teaser, we talked about brain sometimes responds, and Maria talked about the PFC limbic dance that happens at any point of time, and therefore the chemistry that cascades body is something I touched upon, which is our reactions, and you know, all of that is kind of really spins off from the emotions that we feel and experience. So awareness, ability to really access manage, maximize, minimize the emotions so that you work through adversity and crisis is something which is very important, because you and I will always respond to stress situations with an emotion which might be fear, anger, denial, all of those aspects, the three choices that we talk about normally. So that's emotional resilience. Let's switch a bit around spiritual resilience, and then I'll cap it up in the mental resilience element. A spiritual word is, it's kind of again the cues in the word, but spiritual means different things for different people. For some people, it might be faith, religious beliefs, religious practices, a higher power that you believe in, connecting with the cosmos, a higher purpose, your values. And spiritual resilience and the ability of an individual to access whatever you define as your spiritual belief or your spiritual practice or the higher power that gives you a certain surge of energy and that kind of ability to continue in the face of adversity. Now, you and I have heard lots of experiences of people are kind of going through really severe trauma in their life, or at point of time when their body is physically really down, they're unwell, because a great example, but they have been able to access spirituality, that belief that something is going to take place, a belief that they can go through that, even while they might be mentally fatigued, emotionally fatigued. Spiritual resilience can give that energy to a person to be carry on in life. So spiritual can values, as I said, your purpose, or any of your beliefs. That's what spiritual resilience is. Now, bringing it all together to why we were talking about mental resilience. Mental resilience is really the ability for the mind to have cognitive skills so that you and I can think through, analyze, interpret, look at the situation, and make decisions that are favorable. And when I use the word make decisions that are favorable, and we touched upon it in part one, really be able to access a wide variety of choices. And that's what cognitive skills can do. That when you're operating with resilience, then you have access to a variety of choices of how you can address the adversity that you might be experiencing, short term and the long term. That's what at really creating. So you can see how they're kind of linked with each other. And that's what physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental resilience kind of really means. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the symptoms. I've already started touching upon some of them, but I'd like to focus on it a little bit more. Let me invite Maria to comment on some of the. What's the question I want to ask? The question I want to ask you is that when we are trying to spot symptoms of weak resilience, whether in ourselves or in other people, what have you seen and witnessed? If you can share that a bit more so that we can unpack resilience a bit more before we get into some hacks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love how you really pulled it apart and then brought it back together again, because none of these things happen in isolation. The thing being, though, very often the symptoms are seen in the physical or in the emotional. If we're talking about the emotional, it's the overwhelm. You've got too many different emotions, and it's that roller coaster that people can really feel. 1 minute they're okay, the next minute they suddenly plummet. Then a small thing can happen, they're lifted, but they plummet again. So when it comes to the emotional symptoms, you can see it's the up and down as opposed to the more balanced way of looking at it. And physical always gives us some indicators, whether we choose to look at it or not. Things like, am I sleeping well? If we're not sleeping well because our mind's whirling, what that means is my physical being is not going to be renourished. And in actual fact, if we don't get enough sleep, all of the plaque, which is generated by the massive amounts of energy and processes, chemical processes that are going on in the brain, that isn't actually washed out at night. That's what happens when we are sleeping, amongst a million other things. It's a very complex issue. But one of the things that I think is really important to realize is that we can see physical symptoms sometimes more easily than, say, emotional. Well, not all of us like to say, I feel overwhelmed, although mental health is getting much more prevalent in terms of we're able to talk about it. And also, it's that mental mind fog. I know so many of my clients will just be sat there going, I feel okay, I slept okay, but I can't get to. It's almost like there's a fog to walk through before you can even start. And you were saying homeostasis is about balance, and a balanced mental landscape means I've got choices here. But if we are being triggered by that kind of lack of resilience, what's happening is the mental fog, or also the shutdown. How many people just go, I can't, and just close the laptop? Actually, closing the laptop, walking away is a good response, but you can't do that all of the time. And I think the last one, in terms of the spiritual lack of resilience, is when we feel purposeless, when it's not really quite worth it. And actually, faith can be incredibly uplifting, but it's equally and adversely plummeting when we feel like we haven't got any. So to me, those are the kind of things that clients, especially January, February, are bringing. It's like I've lost my purpose, I've got overwhelm, I'm up and down, and my physicality is feeling just pretty not good. And I think that's the thing, as you said during this, as we were introducing this, it's all of them. They're all having an effect on each other. So,
Love
those
it.
are
Love it. Love it. And you made a really good point out there, and let me just flesh that a bit more and then build on some of the examples you said. This whole thing about today, mental well-being, mental health is a big topic in a lot of nations, and thankfully so. And more and more companies are trying to do trainings around it, support systems, processes around it. And all of that is fabulous. I have to say, I have a bit of a critique for some of the companies that are doing this, and perhaps an opportunity for them if they're listening to this. Often what we tend to do is we jump very quickly into the solution mode. And mental well-being, I thought, at the end of the day, and which is why I'm really passionate about the work that you and I are doing, Maria, is that we really spend time trying to understand and build up awareness about what is mental being, well, whatever you want to call it, which is the opposite of mental well-being. What is it, and what is well-being? And let people really understand and recognize whether it's happening in their life and where it's happening. And sometimes these solution trainings, while they're great, and for a moment, congratulate companies that are doing it, my suggestion and invitation is add on and bring in some of the science behind it. Help people become really aware of it and spend enough time on it, because what our work has shown is that when you build up awareness, when you spotlight and give them knowledge, they themselves will find answers that work for them. Because resilience, whether you're feeling resilient or not, is a very personal experience and choice. And therefore, if you're trying to teach them certain models, and we will be sharing some tips with you, but we spend enough time for people to recognize and understand it so they can choose the that work for them. They can pick up an idea and build because they resonated with some of the things which might be an aspect of resilience that we're experiencing. So I really invite people to kind of dial up some of those aspects at mental health and well-being in companies, which I agree totally is a need of the hour and a big focus. And if I may add in with my leadership coach hat on, can be the biggest galvanizer for teams and business to accelerate and succeed in today's day and age. It's like the topic of diversity in the past. It is literally important as that, but hey, that's a big new topic that we will not get into right now. But just to spotlight a bit more around weak resilience before we get into some of the ideas and to build on some of the excellent examples that Maria has shared with us today. I mean, when you're talking about emotion, how many times, and I'm going to ask for you to be able to spot it, whether you're experiencing it, and if you want, you can do a mental rating in your head from to 10, where 10 you're feeling it a lot of the time, all the time, and a lot of it, that would be a 10, and one is actually don't really notice it. And if it's a low score, it's fine. Like sometimes I experience it, which means you might want to on it, but not necessarily take on a strategy to really address it or overcome. So it's all about, so scale of 1 to 10, in case you want to rate yourself. Irritability. How many times are you getting irritable? where you find that you're just responding to things and just getting irritable about things around you, the people you're working with, things that are happening in your life. That's a great symptom. And if it's happening, remember, at a consistent basis, you and I can always get irritable at any point of time. But the question is it happening on a consistent basis? Are you noticing more of it? Are you now going to say that actually I'm feeling it, a lot of the, or some of it most of the time? Well, then something to just watch out for as well. Overreacting to situations, and Maria talked about this whole thing about, you could react in one way and then go down the other way, but you suddenly realize that you're overreacting to situations which you normally would not, but you are just overreacting to small things. It's about, that saying about making a mountain out of a molehill. Did I say that correct, Maria?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Making, and you've seen that you're doing a lot of it, and you could be doing that at work, in your personal life. So that's another symptom of it. Sleeping, Maria's talked about it, very, very vital, important thing. And a lot of people are talking right now about got affected, and then there's sleep deprivation, and that's a whole new topic. In fact, we did talk about some of these topics, Maria, have to say, in our session on mental fatigue. We had done a 2-part series on that, and we talked a lot of these symptoms and how you can address it. So, well, that's another cue for those who are listening to us. If you want to watch the one on mental fatigue, the TBQ live series that we had done on that topic. Illness, I've talked about illness. So watch your health. Are you finding that you're susceptible to more colds and coughs and fevers? Keep an eye on that, because that could be a sign of weak resilience. Thinking about problems, you're finding that you're constantly thinking about problems and get out of. And last couple of years, we all seem to be doing that. The question is stuck in it, and that could be something that is showing that resilience is a big factor. And again, these questionnaires are not just for you. Think of the people around you. Are they experiencing it? Are you picking up signals that are there? Substance abuse, I must talk about that a bit as well. A lot of people go into substance abuse because they think that's the way out. And indeed, we know substance abuse in the short term can give you a lift. And so you feel elevated, but then over a period of time, we know it's harmful. So watch it. Are you drinking more, smoking more? Is there anything that's coming in that sphere? Are you watching people around you doing that? That could be something that might be mechanism that somebody has picked up, which might not be coping mechanism as well. Poor memory, another one that we see. Being moody, and I talked about a bit more around that. Behaviors, feeling getting isolated or becoming too clingy. Is there are you seeing a seesaw in any of those aspects in your behaviors? You're seeing more of that, because that could be another symptom as well. Resilience. And in the whole space that Maria defined it, and I guess sometimes people, and we all sometimes reach that position, and often sometimes coach people who reach that phase in life whereby they're asking themselves that question about what's next, what's the life, where am I going next, what is my plan. That's healthy, that's good to have those questions. But if you're feeling that there's a lack of purpose in life, feeling that, why am I living, what's of it, and if you're feeling constantly having thoughts around that, then it's something that you might need to watch out for and address, because we all know that you can raise awareness through things that we've talked about. But keep an eye on us. That could be something which is pretty significant. And young people to watch out for it. If young people are making those kind of statements, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? It could be a healthy question, but you're intuitive. You're pretty intelligent as well. See, is it an intelligent query that's coming in, or is it something that is being said and kind of showing up in different parts of their life? So it's just something to watch out for as well. So I think those are some of the ideas. Really raise awareness on the resilience factor that anybody is experiencing, the weak resilience factor, which, as you can see, kind of runs across all of those 4 spectrums of physical, emotional, spiritual, mental resilience. Right. So in the addressing resilience, this was step 1, really understanding what is it, How does it like, and how does it look like when it's not there? We all know about, we've seen lovely movies, Netflix stories about people being resilient, but now you know how it really feels. And so sometimes we ignore it, but now, well, now you know. And as we say, knowledge is power, and knowledge is even more powerful. So let's go into some of the hacks how you might be able to build your resilience in any or all of those quadrants. So Maria, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rena. It's so interesting to just have a look, and instead of going straight to the solution, to actually explore what's going on. And the first hack is awareness of the triggers, because we're actually hardwired to be very judgmental. We're scanning for danger. As I've said many times on TBQ Live, the brain's first and foremost job is to keep you alive. We're scanning for danger 15 times a second, quicker than I can say it. And the brain's going, good for me, bad for me, good for me, bad for me. So we are hardwired to judge. The difficulty being judgmental. Being judgmental means that we are actually putting ourselves more into fight or flight or freeze than we need to. And the hack, the thing that will stop that judgmentalism, is being curious. And curiosity means that you're actually turning on part of your brain that can calm down that fight, flight, or freeze response. Because if you are being curious, you are asking your brain questions. And by asking a question of your brain, you have to put on the part of your brain that goes, okay, I need to think about this, which calms the limbic system. That's why I call it the limbic PFC dance. Who's driving, who's leading that dance? When we're curious, we're actually solving our own issue of being judgmental on ourselves. And when we're not feeling resilient, we are much, much, much more judgmental of ourselves. Whereas if we're in that lovely homeostasis balance kind of thing, we are much more curious. So the first hack, be curious. And this is like a process, because once you have been curious, what are you noticing? Where is it? Is it in my body? Is it in my head? Is it in my stomach? I think we've all had that sense of, oh, I can't be all right because my stomach's got butterflies in it, or I've just got an uneasy feeling in my gut. And let's not forget, there are a huge amount of neural cells in your gut. It's telling you something. So go curiosity, then have a look. Where is it? What's going on? Or is it just a pounding in the head because we're all having a look at screens so much more than we usually would do? So once we start being curious, then be observational. What's going on? Then get familiar with it. And when we're being observational, when we are consciously and intentionally being observational, we get a chance to step back from that emotion or that trigger. Because once we are intentionally observing, we're not being the emotion, we're having a look at the emotion. And that's the hack. It's stepping back. This is happening, but what's it telling me? Where is it? Where am I feeling it? And then the next process, get familiar with it. I now know when I'm getting into fight, flight, or freeze mode by just looking at my hands, because I feel my fists clench. You know, we all have a preferred fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a little fighter. So I know just by looking down at my hands that actually I'm getting a little bit stressed here. And that really easy familiarization of what my triggers are means that I can do something about it. I can do some breathing, or I can have a look. I can ask some questions. The minute I start asking questions, the minute my brain goes out of fight, flight, or freeze a little bit and takes me to the next place. So this is a great hack: curiosity, observation, feel it, don't be it, and then get familiar. What are the ways? Because as Rena said so well earlier, everyone's responses are different. What would stress somebody else out won't stress me out. What would be a great thing for someone to do? I'm scared of heights. Someone stood on a viewpoint high up a mountain, not my idea of fun. We have very, very different ways of responding, and it's really important to know you. How do I respond? Because the more you know about how you respond, the more also you can have a look in other people. Okay, are they feeling like I am? Oh, no, they're not. Okay, that's great. It's me, so I can deal with it. If you're leading teams, being aware of what their triggers are by asking them because they know themselves better. Having open conversations, not to rush to solutions, but just having a conversation around something allows you to build your own awareness of your team. And then obviously in a whole company, you can have different ways of having a look to make sure everyone's okay. The next thing I want to go on to is biases. Now, we all have biases, and actually, the brain uses them really, really well. They're shorthand. Because if I need to consciously think about something, that's 20% of my body's overall resources. And people say the brain's lazy. I say it's great at conserving energy. If I don't need to consciously think, then I'm not using energy that I might need for something else. So biases are a great opportunity the brain uses to just quickly shorthand information. So I know instantly if the person behind me is male, female, if they are of my culture or if they're not. And we're all getting great at being very accepting of other culture and knowing that diversity actually makes us all much, much better. But there are over 180 biases so far identified. There will be more because each brain is individual. But I just want to pull out 3 of them. This is also based on some of the work of Daniel Kahneman, who has that wonderful book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. He actually won a Nobel Prize in 2002 because it was the huge contribution that using psychology and neuroscience brought to the world of economics. So when we talk about applying science, we stand on the shoulders of giants. It's great to know how my brain's working so that then I can get the very best out of my thinking. So the halo effect, I think we're all aware of it. When someone's magnetic, when they're really popular, when they're very, very pretty, we tend to attribute great characteristics to that person. Oh, they must be great at leading a team. Oh, I bet they're really kind. I bet they're really generous. And yet, in actual fact, we have no actual hard data for that instant attributing of great characteristics. So once we know about the halo effect, let's be aware of it, and then let's look for some hard data. That's the solve. Okay, I think that person's great, but also let their work talk for themselves. Let their behaviors talk for themselves. The next one I want to come on to is confirmation bias. The brain wants to confirm its feeling, and feelings are what drive 90% of brain function. So if I have a feeling, my brain's looking out to confirm that my feeling is right or not right, but it's looking to confirm it's right. The brain loves to be right. It's a very clever machine, and it would love us to always be right. So if I feel that my boss is thinking, actually, this person's not, I'm not necessarily performing really well. We may have a 360 or an appraisal or even a brief meeting. And the boss will say, oh, you did that great. This, loved it. That, really, really well done. This bit needs a bit of development. And all of us will hear that bit loudest. Yeah, we've totally discounted the things that we have got praised for, because when it comes to survival, negative screams, because it's danger of death, are positive whispers. So you may have got some great information, great feedback that actually you're doing a really good job, but because you are feeling like you're not performing well, you're listening for the negative. So be really aware of what your emotions are telling you, because they're asking for confirmation. Okay, and the last one, base rate fallacy. Base rate fallacy is the fact, and it was Kahneman and Tversky who did a research thing on this that said basically individuated facts about a person or a situation we take into account, and we dismiss the hard data, the statistics. We're not listening. We are hearing the individuated facts. So, for example, he uses a great example of the fact that a guy called Steve is considered very, very shy. He asks people, okay, there are 2 jobs he possibly could be having. He could be a librarian or he could be a salesperson. Base rate fallacy, i.e., not looking at the statistics, but looking at the individuated characteristics, said, well, if he's shy, he's got to be a librarian. But actually, Steve was a salesman. Just because you're shy doesn't mean to say you can't put on a role and go and sell really, really well. So be really aware of the fact that once we start hearing a few characteristics of people, we will make massive assumptions. The brain makes these assumptions because there are biases. Those are great shorthand, but we can also move slightly further up the brainstem and look at the hard data too. Okay, so that's your next hack. Feel what you feel, hear your assumptions, and then take a look at them. Are they right? Are they serving me? Are they serving that person? Or are they actually just shorthands of the brain? So these are some of the strategies that we are talking about today. And I'm just going to go through a few and pull out a few. Developing emotional vocabulary. Why am I talking about that? The thing is, emotions drive 90% of brain function if we're not intentional, if we're not bringing things into our awareness. The thing being, if I'm angry, am I really angry? Because that's a massive response. Or am I actually quite hurt? Or do I feel discounted and dismissed? Am I really, really happy? Or am I just glad because someone paid me a compliment and I needed that kind of lift? Or am I genuinely grateful that someone has noticed a talent of mine? When I stand very often in front of, Rena and I have done this in our work. When I stand in front of a group of people and you ask them to name emotions, people start drying up after 10, 12, 15. There are over 3,000 words in the English language for emotions. The more we ideally and refine and pinpoint what our actual emotion is, the more resilient we can become. Why? Because we know what we're actually feeling. Once we have really defined, it's not anger, it's hurt, then we can do something about the situation. And that's why awareness is so much more important than jumping straight to the solution. Because once you become very aware, you then are actually dealing with the real underlying cause and not just putting a plaster over the symptom. The other great strategy is ask your brain questions. Our brain is first and foremost to keep us alive, to keep us surviving. Thriving comes later. So we're there. The brain's first thing to do is to keep us alive. Its second job in the hierarchy of function is problem solving. Why? To keep us alive. If I can solve problems, I've got a higher chance of survival. So let's leverage that. Let's leverage the brain's ability to always find a solution. The more questions you ask of the situation when you're feeling, hold on, I'm not feeling as resilient as I'd like to, or as sometimes as the word, I feel like I should be. So once you start asking the brain questions, it will answer them. Always. You know that time on the bus when you suddenly think, hold on, what am I listening to? Who sang that song? And then 3 hours later, suddenly your brain gives you a readout. So whatever question you ask your brain, it gets on and answers it in your subconscious. It doesn't use the awareness, which is very, very energy consuming. It just puts it what I call to the back brain. It works on it and then it sends you a readout. So asking your brain's questions when you're feeling less than resilient is a great way to build your resilience in the moment. The next one on that list is SCARF, which is a David Rock brilliant acronym for what the brain needs to come out of that limbic response, that fight, flight, or freeze, and put us back into that balanced thinking response. We've gone into it in great depth in a lot of TBQ lives, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it now. If you want to watch a replay, we really took a deep dive on the 11th of January, so maybe watch that one. Okay, risk-taking. Risk-taking, take small risks. This is when we start getting a sustainable reservoir of strength upon which to draw. The more your brain is used to taking tiny risks, the less it gets freaked out and goes into fight, flight, or freeze when bigger risks are needed. So it's that practice makes progress. And then lastly, the power of the pause. We get an opportunity between stimulus and response lies choice. I could speak on this for ages, but let's get on to the next thing that Rena's going to share with us about how we can develop some really sustainable emotional resilience. Okay, over to you, Rena.
I love it that you keep calling it emotional resilience.
Oh,
I just love it.
that's
No,
my
that's
tired
perfect.
brain.
That's perfect. Yes, that's perfect. I mean, that's such a great thing. This is a real, very real telecast that's taking place right now. I love it. And some great insights out there, Maria. And I'm just going to pull out the aspect and just build on a few more. We've got about another 5 minutes to kind of cover up a few techniques, strategies that you might want to keep in mind. And Maria talked a lot about cognitive biases, and there are many, many more. And we do kind of focus on some of those in our new blueprint program. In fact, there are 8 of those that we help leaders raise awareness on, sharpen, and become better at it. Not just because cognitive bias is important from a resilience aspect. Cognitive bias is an important topic when you're talking about decision making. And in today's world, what leaders and teams are doing all the time, every time, is taking and making decisions. And because times are so stressful, what happens is that's when the efficient brain, I call it the efficient brain, kind of kicks in and uses these cognitive biases to make decisions. And which is why 90% of decisions are made without really thinking it through. It's a gut feeling and reaction, which is really that shortcut that your brain has made, and then you look for data points to make it right, which is really important because cognitive biases can lead to overconfidence. It can lead to judgmental errors. It can be catastrophic for businesses. But so that's one aspect why it's really important. And from a resilience aspect, why it becomes really important is because those are the things that might be getting you to move into what we call make kind of a response, or to get your stress triggers up and running. We use an acronym called GALE. So you can see in new blueprint, we use a lot of these terminology, the PFC limbic dance, the GALES, and so on and so forth. But what is the GALE? Is an acronym. It stands for G, the gremlin, A, the assumptions, I, the interpretations that we make, and L is the limiting beliefs. And it's really, really important to think about these GALEs at any point of time, because when you do, then you start realizing that some of those might be either attached to those cognitive biases, or your GALEs are the one that comes into play when you're experiencing stress. And therefore, it releases what we call the catabolic response that we talked a lot about in part 1. And that's fundamentally really aware. And that awareness then gives you the power to be aware of what is the choice that you're making or taking. You might do it in retrospect to begin with, but as you build up that awareness and understanding that Maria was talking about, you know how to really respond to the future. Because what you're trying to do really, when you're doing all of these things, is shift that biochemistry and that reaction in your body from what we call the catabolic energy towards the anabolic. And again, we've talked a lot about catabolic and anabolic in our briefly. Catabolic, when you and I are experiencing fear, anger, anxiety, stress aspects, and anabolic energies when you're experiencing being in the flow, passionate, joyful, happy, calm. And as you can imagine, there are more choices available to us when we are anabolic. So it's really trying to move into that segment of being, because then you can be mentally more resilient. We've talked a lot about harnessing emotional, which is so vitally important. And the important thing is, with curiosity, I love that word that Maria talked about, is to be non-judgmental. Think about emotions being a spectrum. They're dense. We're going to be talking about emotional resilience in our next TBQ Live and really going into it. So really look at it as a spectrum, pick up those data points and learn how to kind of watch and kind of build on points that your body and brain and mind and gut and everything is telling you. The other thing that we talk about in the resilience is about strengthening your anabolic beliefs. So you know now what anabolic is, that word. what is the support systems? So it's not just the beliefs. What are your beliefs that really become your anchor point? A lot of people kind of talk about, the glass being half full rather than half empty kind of a mindset they have. Or they have a positive mindset. Whenever there's a challenge, they call it an opportunity. Or they might think, that actually all challenges are opportunities to learn. You can never make a mistake. Living is about being an adventure. There are many beliefs or it might be your faith that you have, where you draw upon. So what's that anabolic belief that you can really strengthen and remind yourself, which is why things like meditation, mindfulness, talking about positive things, getting to positive conversations are really important, because it keeps reminding the brain when to address so many chaos around you, so that you can build resilience. And it's also the support systems. And so really, I know that sometimes people fall into the trap. Don't. So think about what are the support systems you have there you can draw your energy from, whether it is one friend or it's a circle of friends, whether it is one family member or a circle of family members. What's the support system? Or is it music? Or is it something that is a passion hobby? What's the system that you have, and build and train yourself on it? Listen to your body, train your inner voice, keep listening to your body, to the emotions, the reactions that you have. Follow your value system. They are big topics, but we just want to drip feed it so that you can start thinking about which one catches my interest. Of course, we talk about a lot more in going forward in our conversations, but for the moment there are some ideas out here for you to really pick up and be resilient, because resilience is a long-term marathon. It's not 100-meter dash. It's not just that immediate bounce back that we need. Well, Maria and I have been talking about this for a really long time, but we really need to wrap up conversation. And in the last 30 seconds, I'm going to hand over to Maria to talk about next time's TBQ Live.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rena. There is so much that we could talk about when it comes to mental resilience. However, we're running out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time out to join our conversation. Leave us messages and watch it. And if you're on the replay, reach out to us on LinkedIn. So our next time that we are here is the 22nd of February, and we were talking about emotional resilience, which was a word I used many times during this broadcast. It's about leveraging music to help and affect your mood. It's a fascinating subject. It has been covered by a lot of people. We have the expert Tom. He is Tom Freeston. He's a sound engineer. He is bringing some really interesting neuro points because the man is passionate about music and passionate about neuroscience. So it feels like a perfect fit. Okay, I am going to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Rena. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much.
Always. And we will see you on the other side next time. Thank you.
Lovely
Bye.
to be here. Bye for now. Take care.
Bye for now.